The sky above the colony was a deep, burning orange, as if the sun itself had caught fire. A thin layer of dust swept across the barren landscape, swirling around the feet of the prisoners as they were marched forward. They were handcuffed, shackled, and exhausted, their faces pale with fear and hunger. Behind them, the sound of heavy boots echoed against the metal walls of the enormous compound, each step a reminder of the authority that ruled this world. Among the prisoners, there was a young girl named Lyra. She was no more than 7 years old, clutching the hand of her father, whose face was streaked with soot and sweat. Her big, bright eyes were filled with fear, but also with a strange curiosity. Lyra had never seen a place like this. The execution grounds were surrounded by enormous walls, metallic and cold, and in the distance, strange machines hovered in the air, their lights scanning the prisoners as they marched. The prisoners came from all over the galaxy, captured by the Dominion, a ruthless regime that believed in total control and absolute obedience. The Dominion soldiers didn't see humans as equals. They saw them as weak, unpredictable, and dangerous. And today the humans were about to face the ultimate test. "Line them up," the commander barked, his voice metallic, amplified by the speakers built into his helmet. He was tall, with a mask covering his face, hiding any trace of emotion. Around him the soldiers moved with perfect precision, herding the prisoners into a long, straight line. Lyra clung to her father, her small hand trembling. Her father bent down and whispered, "Stay close to me, Lyra. Don't let go, no matter what happens." Lyra nodded silently, her eyes wide as she scanned the strange soldiers around them. They were tall, their skin a pale gray, and their faces had sharp alien features. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning every movement of the prisoners. Lyra could feel their gaze resting on her, cold and calculating, as if trying to measure her very soul. The line of prisoners stretched endlessly, and as Lyra's gaze followed it, she noticed something strange. Not all the prisoners were humans. There were others, creatures from distant planets, some covered in scales, some with multiple limbs, and others with eyes that glimmered like stars. But there was one prisoner who did not belong. He was human. Not just any human, but unlike any human Lyra had seen before. He was tall and strong, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to burn with quiet intensity. There was a calmness about him, a presence that seemed to push back against the fear in the air. Lyra's small heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why, but something about him felt different. The Dominion soldiers began their inspection. They moved down the line, examining each prisoner carefully. The aliens they herded were obedient, standing straight and silent, knowing resistance meant immediate death. The humans, however, were less predictable. Some trembled, some shouted, some looked away, but all felt the same dread. When the soldiers reached the human who had caught Lyra's attention, the commander paused. He studied the man closely, his glowing eyes narrowing. The man didn't flinch. He didn't speak. He simply stood there, hands bound but posture strong, his gaze steady. The commander frowned. Humans were supposed to fear, to break easily. This one, he was different. Lyra watched closely. She wanted to look away, but something in the man's eyes made her keep staring. He didn't look dangerous, at least not in the way she understood danger. Yet there was a strength, a quiet courage that seemed to radiate from him. She felt a strange warmth, a sense of hope, that maybe not all humans were powerless. The soldiers finished their inspection and stepped back. The line of prisoners was now complete. The commander raised his arm, signaling the beginning of the execution process. The ground trembled slightly, and a series of devices activated along the line. They were strange machines designed to subdue any prisoner who tried to resist. Sparks flew, and a low hum filled the air, sending shivers down the prisoners' spines. "Prisoners of the human race," the commander announced, his voice echoing through the speakers. "You have been deemed dangerous to the order of the Dominion. Your crimes are many, and your punishment will be final. Today the weak will fall and the strong will be crushed." A murmur of fear ran through the line. Lyra's father held her hand tightly, whispering reassurances she couldn't fully believe. The little girl's eyes never left the human who had caught her attention. She didn't know why, but she felt she had to protect him, even though she was just a child. As the execution sequence began, a strange tension filled the air. The other prisoners seemed resigned to their fate, some with tears in their eyes, others with silent anger. But the human remained calm. He didn't flinch, he didn't panic. His presence seemed to command attention, even in the midst of fear. Lyra, feeling a surge of courage, stepped slightly forward. tugging at her father's hand. "Papa, look at him," she whispered. "The human. He's different." Her father frowned, his eyes darting nervously around. "Lyra, don't draw attention to yourself. It's dangerous," but Lyra couldn't look away. Her small finger instinctively pointed toward the man. "That one. He's not like the others," she said softly, almost to herself. The commander noticed the movement. His glowing eyes turned toward the little girl, and for the first time, his voice faltered slightly. It was a strange sound, almost a hiss. The soldiers glanced at each other, confused. Children were never supposed to intervene, never supposed to notice anything important. The human's gaze finally met Lyra's. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. The dust swirled around them. The hum of the machines filled the silence, and the alien soldiers froze. Lyra felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't understand why, but she knew she had made the right choice. She had pointed out something important, something that could change everything. The commander's hand twitched. He was about to order the machines to activate fully when a strange sound echoed from the human, a soft, commanding tone, not loud but filled with authority. The air seemed to vibrate around him. Some of the alien soldiers stepped back, unsettled by the calm confidence in the human's voice. Lyra gripped her father's hand tightly. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time she felt hope. Maybe this human could survive. Maybe he could change everything. And somehow she knew that her small action, her pointing, was the start of something much bigger than herself. The machines hummed louder, and the execution sequence was about to continue. But the attention had shifted. All eyes were on the human now. And in that moment, the little girl realized that courage didn't always come from strength or size. Sometimes it came from noticing the truth, even in the smallest voice. And so in the heart of the Dominion's most feared execution ground, a little girl's finger pointed at a human, and for the first time the line of fear wavered. Something new had begun, something that would change the fate of everyone present and perhaps the entire galaxy. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the execution grounds. The prisoners stood in a tense line, their fear palpable. Every muscle in their bodies screamed to flee, yet the heavy chains around their wrists and ankles made movement impossible. The alien soldiers patrolled around them like predators, their glowing eyes scanning each prisoner with an unsettling precision. Lyra's tiny hand was still wrapped tightly around her father's. Her small body trembled, not from the cold, but from the fear that grew with each passing second. Yet her eyes were fixed on the human she had pointed out, the one who had already caused a ripple of unease among the alien soldiers. The human had not moved since Lyra had noticed him. He stood tall, calm, his hands still bound in front of him. But there was something almost magnetic about him. The way he carried himself, the quiet strength in his gaze. It was as if he could see beyond the execution grounds, beyond the chains and fear, to a world that the aliens could never touch. "Commander," one of the alien soldiers said, his voice slightly hesitant. "The human, he is unlike the others. There is something unusual." The commander's glowing eyes flickered, showing the first hint of uncertainty. "Humph. All humans are unpredictable," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "But this," child pointing him out, "strange." The commander walked closer to the line, his boots echoing on the metal floor. Lyra shrank back slightly, clutching her father. Her father whispered in her ear, "Stay behind me, Lyra. Don't draw attention." But the little girl's curiosity had turned into something more than fear. She felt a strange connection to the human. She didn't know why, but she sensed he was important, someone who could survive when everyone else might not. The commander stopped in front of the human. He raised a hand and signaled for the execution machines to pause. Sparks and hums filled the air, as the prisoners froze mid-motion, unsure if their lives would end in the next second. "You," the commander said, pointing a long, armored finger at the human. "You are different. Explain why you do not tremble. Why do you not fear death?" The human's voice was calm, quiet, yet it carried an authority that made even the soldiers hesitate. "Fear is a choice," he said simply. "And courage. Courage is acting even when fear is present." The line of prisoners shifted slightly, murmuring among themselves. Some didn't understand the words, but they felt the meaning in the calm confidence of the man. Lyra's eyes widened. She didn't fully understand what he meant, but it felt right. It gave her hope. The commander's hands clenched. "Humans are weak. You speak of courage, yet you are chained like the rest. Show me this courage. Survive or perish like the others. Suddenly, one of the execution machines activated, sending a bright beam of light toward a nearby alien prisoner. Sparks flew and the prisoner froze, paralyzed instantly by the energy. The humans and other prisoners shivered at the sight. The machines were deadly, precise, and they left no room for error. Lyra gripped her father's hand tightly. "Papa, can he survive that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her father shook his head slowly, fear etched on his face. I don't know, Lyra. Nobody has ever survived these machines, nobody." The human turned his gaze toward Lyra, and for a brief moment, a small smile appeared on his face. It was a smile not of arrogance, but of reassurance. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. Somehow she knew he would not give up. Somehow she felt that courage could indeed defy the impossible. The commander raised his hand again, signaling the soldiers to begin the next phase. Chains rattled as prisoners were moved forward in small groups toward the machines. The human remained still, calm, waiting for his turn. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. As the first prisoner approached the machine, a soft whirring filled the air. Lights scanned the prisoner, analyzing every movement, every heartbeat. Then, with a sudden burst, the machine activated. A beam of energy enveloped the prisoner, and for a moment everything seemed still. The prisoner's scream was cut short, the light fading, leaving only silence. Lyra's small body shook. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing she could disappear, wishing she could hide from the horror around her. But when she opened them, the human was still standing, calm, unshaken. Her fear battled with a growing sense of hope. One by one, prisoners were tested. The aliens, despite their advanced technology, could not understand the human's presence. Each time a beam approached him, something seemed to shift in the air. The light would waver, the machine would falter, and the human would remain unharmed. The soldiers began to murmur among themselves, confusion spreading like wildfire. The commander's face, hidden behind his mask, betrayed irritation. "This is impossible," he hissed. No human should withstand even a fraction of the machine's power. The human finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "You underestimate what humans are capable of," he said. "We survive, we adapt, and sometimes we protect more than just ourselves." Lyra felt a shiver run through her. His words, simple as they were, held a depth she couldn't yet understand. She sensed that the human was not only capable of defending himself, but might also protect others. Could he protect her? Could he protect her father? The commander raised his hand for the final test. The human stepped forward slowly, chains clinking with each step. The alien soldiers tensed, ready to activate the machine. Lyra's hand tightened around her father's, her small knuckles turning white. "Now," the commander commanded, and a blinding beam shot toward the human. The ground shook slightly as energy pulsed from the machine. But instead of harming him, the beam seemed to disperse, almost bending around the man as if he were part of the air itself. The soldiers recoiled in disbelief. "Impossible," one of the soldiers shouted. "It should have destroyed him." The human raised his hand slowly, not in attack, but in calm defiance. "I am not your enemy," he said quietly, "but I will not be broken." The tension in the air was thick, like a storm about to break. Lyra's father stared in shock, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. His daughter, however, felt a small spark of hope growing inside her heart. Somehow she knew that things were about to change. The commander, now visibly furious, slammed his armored fist against the metal floor. "Enough!" he bellowed. "This human, this creature, will learn obedience or he will die. I do not tolerate failure." The human stepped closer, his eyes meeting Lyra's for a moment. In that instant, she felt a strange sense of safety, as if he could protect her from the fear and cruelty around them. She wanted to reach out, to tell him to save them, but she was frozen in place. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared throughout the compound. Red lights flashed across the walls and the soldiers tensed, their focus shifting. Something was happening outside the execution grounds, something urgent enough to distract even the commander. The human seized the moment. With a swift movement, he bent down and grabbed a small device from his belt, something hidden beneath his clothing. The machine in front of him activated again, but this time he pressed a few buttons and a pulse of energy shot outward, disabling the machines along the line. Sparks flew, alarms blared, but the prisoners were suddenly free from the immediate threat of execution. Lyra's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never seen such courage, such skill in anyone before. The human's calm presence had turned the tide, and for a moment the fear that had gripped the prisoners began to fade. "Stay behind me," the human commanded, his voice steady. Lyra and her father instinctively obeyed, following the strange, calm figure who had just defied the most powerful weapons of the Dominion. The commander roared in fury, signaling his soldiers to attack. But the human moved with a speed and precision that seemed almost impossible. Within moments, he had created a path through the machines and the soldiers, guiding the prisoners away from immediate danger. Lyra's heart raced. She was terrified, yet she felt alive in a way she never had before. As they reached the edge of the compound, the human turned back for a brief moment. His eyes met Lyra's once again, and she saw something in them: hope, courage, and the promise that they could survive. For the first time in her young life, Lyra believed that even in the darkest moments, a single person could make a difference. And this human, he was more than a survivor. He was a beacon. The alarms echoed like a chorus of panic through the Dominion compound. Red lights flashed across the metal walls, casting long shadows over the prisoners who had barely begun to comprehend the miracle that had just occurred. Lyra's small hand stayed tightly in her father's, but her heart now beat with something stronger than fear. It beat with hope. The human who had stopped the execution machines led the way with quiet authority. Every step he took was careful yet assured. The prisoners behind him followed, a mixture of disbelief and trust in their eyes. Even the aliens, those bound in the line earlier, watched from a distance, unsure of what they were witnessing. "Keep moving," the human whispered, glancing back at the line of prisoners. "Don't stop. Stay close to each other." Lyra's father nodded, gripping her hand tightly. "Stay behind me, Lyra," he said. But his voice carried a tremor that betrayed his own fear. Lyra, however, found herself inching closer to the human, drawn to the calmness that seemed to radiate from him. The compound was vast and filled with dangers. Machines that patrolled the perimeter moved like silent beasts, scanning for any movement. Alien guards shouted orders, their voices amplified by their masks, trying to corral the prisoners back into submission. But the human moved with a strange understanding of the compound, avoiding patrols and navigating through dark corridors that even some soldiers rarely entered. As they turned a corner, Lyra noticed something surprising. A small group of humans had hidden themselves in the shadows. They looked weak, frightened, but there was relief in their eyes as they saw the man leading the prisoners. You're alive," one of them whispered, stepping forward cautiously. "I am," the human said calmly, "and I'm getting all of you out. Stay close. Don't make a sound." The group of prisoners joined the line, their steps careful and quiet. Lyra's heart swelled as she realized that the human was not just a survivor. He was a protector, someone capable of guiding them all through danger. But the path to freedom was not easy. A series of security gates loomed ahead, each one more fortified than the last. The human paused, examining the mechanisms with intense focus. Sparks flickered from nearby control panels, and his hands moved quickly, pressing buttons and adjusting levers. "Father," Lyra whispered, tugging at his sleeve. "Will he really get us out?" Her father's eyes were fixed on the human. I don't know, Lyra, but I have never seen anyone like him. If anyone can, it's him." The first gate clicked open, and the prisoners moved forward silently. The human led them through narrow corridors, each turn bringing new challenges. Alarms blared sporadically, and the hum of machines filled the air like a constant threat. Yet every time danger approached, the human seemed to anticipate it, guiding the group safely past guards and devices. At one point, they reached a massive hall filled with suspended energy fields. The machines created invisible barriers that could fry anyone who touched them. The human studied the fields for a moment and then took a step forward. Lyra's eyes widened. She thought he would be struck instantly, but he moved as if the fields recognized him, bending around him and leaving a safe path for the others. "Follow me. Quickly but carefully," he instructed. "Keep your hands close. One wrong move and the fields will activate." Step by step, the prisoners followed, holding their breath as they moved through the deadly hall. Lyra kept her eyes on the human, drawing courage from his calm demeanor. When she accidentally stumbled on a loose cable, he reached out without hesitation, steadying her with a gentle grip. "You're safe," he said softly. "Just keep going." After what felt like hours but was only minutes, they reached another gate. This one was more heavily guarded, and Lyra could see soldiers patrolling outside. their glowing eyes scanning for any sign of escape. The human paused, crouching to examine a control panel. His fingers moved quickly, working with tools that seemed to appear from nowhere. Sparks flew and the soft hum of electricity filled the air. "Almost there," he whispered to the prisoners. "Stay calm. We can do this." A distant explosion shook the compound and alarms intensified. The human's eyes flicked toward the source, calculating risks in a way that seemed almost impossible. "We don't have much time," he said. "Move." The prisoners hurried through the gate just as the human triggered a small device. The gate locked behind them with a loud clang, and the group slipped into a dimly lit corridor. Lyra's heart raced with excitement and fear. She looked around and saw the human giving instructions to keep everyone together, his calm voice cutting through the chaos. Suddenly, the corridor ended in a large room filled with strange vehicles. Hovercrafts, small shuttles, and transport pods filled the space. Lyra's eyes widened at the sight. She had never seen such machines up close. "The vehicles are our way out," the human explained. "We need to get everyone inside and leave the compound before reinforcements arrive." The prisoners worked quickly, following his lead. Lyra's father helped the weaker humans into a shuttle, while Lyra stayed close to the human. She wanted to help, but she realized there was little she could do. Still, being near him made her feel braver than she had ever felt. As they climbed into one of the hovercrafts, the human checked each prisoner, making sure everyone was safe. Lyra noticed that he didn't just think of himself. He thought of everyone, even those too scared or weak to help themselves. Her small heart swelled with admiration. "Ready?" he asked, turning to look at the prisoners. His eyes met Lyra's for a brief moment, and she nodded, gripping her father's hand. With a low hum, the hovercraft lifted off the ground. The prisoners held their breath as the city of the Dominion spread below them, glowing with strange lights and heavy machinery. The human piloted the craft with skill, weaving through patrol drones and energy beams, each movement precise and calculated. "Stay low," he instructed. "They'll try to intercept us." The group pressed against the floor, holding tightly to each other. Lyra felt her father's hand tremble beside hers. Yet through the fear, she could sense a growing hope. The human was leading them to freedom, and somehow she knew they would survive this. As the hovercraft soared above the compound, the alarms below grew distant. Lyra allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine smile she had felt in days. She looked at the human, who was focused on piloting, his eyes sharp and determined. You saved us," Lyra whispered, her voice full of awe. He glanced at her briefly and nodded. "We save each other," he said. "That's how humans survive." The hovercraft moved further away from the Dominion compound, and Lyra began to notice the stars above. For the first time, she felt free. Even though the danger was not entirely gone, she realized that courage was not just about fighting or running. It was about standing together, protecting those who could not protect themselves. But the journey was far from over. The human knew that the Dominion would not give up easily. They would hunt the prisoners relentlessly. Lyra felt a chill, realizing that their escape was only the beginning. As the hovercraft moved through the darkened skies, Lyra's eyes stayed on the human. His calm, steady presence gave her courage she didn't know she had. Somehow she understood that the human was more than just a protector. He was a symbol of hope, a force that could challenge even the most powerful enemy. The hovercraft approached a distant planet, one that promised safety, but Lyra knew that the challenges ahead would test them in ways they could not yet imagine. Still, for the first time, she felt hope. For the first time, she believed that even in the darkest moments, courage and determination could light the way, and as the human guided the hovercraft toward the unknown, Lyra realized something important. Sometimes survival was not about strength alone. It was about hope, unity, and the courage to act, even when everything seemed impossible. The little girl, the human, and the prisoners had taken the first step toward freedom. But the real test, the one that would define their future, was still ahead. The hovercraft glided silently through the dark void of space, the stars streaking past like ribbons of silver. Inside, the prisoners huddled together, exhausted but alive. Lyra clutched her father's hand tightly, still wide-eyed from the terrifying escape they had just survived. For a moment, the silence of space felt like a blessing. They had made it out of the Dominion compound, but freedom was far from guaranteed. The human who had led them, who now carried the weight of hope for dozens of lives, sat at the controls. His hands moved with precise, practiced motions, guiding the hovercraft through asteroid fields and debris with remarkable skill. Lyra watched him, fascinated and inspired. Despite the immense danger, he remained calm and confident, every decision measured and deliberate. "Are we safe?" her father whispered, barely audible. "For now," the human replied, his voice calm but firm. "But the Dominion will not stop. They will hunt us relentlessly. We have to stay ahead of them." Lyra felt a shiver run through her. The thought of being pursued by the Dominion filled her with fear, but she also felt a spark of determination. If this human could face the Dominion and protect all of them, then maybe, just maybe, they could survive. Suddenly, a series of blips appeared on the hovercraft's radar. The human's eyes narrowed, scanning the approaching signals. "They've found us," he said quietly. "Prepare yourselves. We are not alone." Panic began to ripple through the prisoners. Some whispered in fear, others clutched each other tightly. Lyra felt her heart pounding in her chest. She glanced at the human, whose calm gaze never wavered. It was this steadiness, this unwavering confidence that gave her a strange courage she had never felt before. "We will have to fight," the human continued, his voice steady, "or we will have to outsmart them. I will guide you. Just follow my lead." As the enemy craft approached, the hovercraft dropped into an asteroid field. Rocks of all sizes floated in the void, moving slowly but dangerously. The human maneuvered the craft with incredible precision, weaving through narrow gaps and dodging larger asteroids. Red warning lights flashed on the dashboard as enemy weapons fired, narrowly missing the craft. Lyra clung to her father, her knuckles white with tension. "Can he really do this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yes," her father replied, his voice filled with awe. "I've never seen anyone like him. He's extraordinary." The human glanced back briefly, giving a small nod to reassure them. "Stay focused. Trust me." Minutes felt like hours as they navigated the deadly asteroid field. The enemy craft pursued relentlessly, firing beams of energy that cut through the rocks and narrowly missed their hovercraft. But the human's skill was unmatched. Every movement was precise, every decision calculated. Slowly, they began to put distance between themselves and their pursuers. Finally, the hovercraft emerged from the asteroid field into a quiet stretch of space. The prisoners let out collective breaths they didn't realize they were holding. Lyra's small body relaxed slightly, but her eyes remained fixed on the human. She felt a deep admiration mixed with awe and gratitude. "We're not out of danger," the human reminded them. "The Dominion will continue to chase us. But this is a start. We need to find a safe place to regroup." As they drifted through the dark expanse, a small remote planet appeared on the radar. Its surface was rugged, with mountains and dense forests offering the perfect hiding place. The human altered their course, guiding the hovercraft toward the planet. Lyra's heart leapt with hope. Perhaps they could finally rest, even if only for a short while. The landing was tense but successful. The hovercraft touched down quietly in a small clearing, surrounded by thick trees and rocky cliffs. The prisoners disembarked cautiously, scanning the area for any signs of pursuit. Lyra clung to her father as they moved further into the forest, following the human's lead. "This place will keep us hidden for now," the human said, his voice low but confident. "We need to rest and plan our next move. The Dominion will not give up easily." As night fell, the forest was filled with strange, soft sounds, distant animals, rustling leaves, and the gentle hum of the planet's atmosphere. For the first time since their capture, the prisoners felt a small sense of safety. Lyra's small hands fidgeted nervously, but she felt a strange comfort in the human's presence. "Why? Why do they want to hurt us?" Lyra asked quietly, her voice barely audible. The human knelt to meet her gaze, his eyes gentle but serious. "Because they fear what they cannot control," he explained. "The Dominion fears humans because we are unpredictable. We survive, we adapt, and sometimes we rise when they least expect it. That's why they try to destroy us." Lyra thought about his words. Somehow they made sense. Humans were small, fragile, yet capable of incredible things. And this human, he was proof of that. She felt a surge of determination inside her. Maybe she could help too, in her own small way. As the group settled into a hidden cave, the human began to plan. Using scraps of technology from the hovercraft and some tools he carried, he started devising ways to protect the group and communicate with potential allies. His mind worked tirelessly, always thinking ahead, always finding solutions. Hours passed and the prisoners began to feel a sense of camaraderie. They had survived the Dominion's most feared execution machines, escaped their grasp, and now had a chance to fight back, or at least to survive. Lyra listened to the conversations around her, absorbing stories of courage, loss, and hope. She realized that even in the darkest moments, humans could find strength together. Suddenly, the sound of movement outside the cave drew their attention. The human quickly assessed the situation, signaling everyone to stay quiet. Shadows moved between the trees. Dominion scouts, searching for any trace of the escaped prisoners. The human held up a hand, signaling the group to stay hidden. Lyra's heart raced. She clutched her father's arm, her small body pressed against his. The scouts moved closer, their glowing eyes scanning the forest. One misstep, one noise could give them away. The human whispered instructions, guiding the group silently deeper into the cave. His knowledge of strategy and survival was extraordinary. Every movement was calculated to avoid detection, every decision made to protect the prisoners. Lyra watched in awe as he led them through narrow tunnels and hidden passages, keeping them safe from the scouts outside. Hours later, when the danger had passed, the human gathered the prisoners together. "You all need to rest," he said. "We have survived today, but the fight is not over. The Dominion will continue to pursue us. We must be ready for whatever comes next." Lyra's father looked at him, admiration and gratitude evident in his eyes. You've saved all of us," he said softly. The human shook his head. "I've only shown you the way. Courage and hope will carry you further than strength alone. Remember that." As the prisoners settled down to rest, Lyra sat close to the human, her mind racing with thoughts. She realized that even though she was small, even though she was just a child, she had witnessed something extraordinary. She had seen courage in its purest form, and she knew deep in her heart that she wanted to be brave too. The night passed quietly, filled with soft whispers and cautious movements. Lyra dreamed of the future, of freedom, of hope, of a world where humans could survive and thrive despite the Dominion's cruelty. She felt the presence of the human beside her like a shield, a beacon of strength in the darkness. By dawn, the prisoners were ready to move again. The human had already devised a plan to leave the planet safely and continue their journey. Lyra's heart pounded with anticipation. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and full of challenges. But for the first time since their capture, she believed that they could survive, and perhaps even prevail. The human turned to the group. "We move at first light," he said. "Stay close, stay quiet, and remember, courage is our greatest weapon. Together we are stronger than they expect." Lyra's small hands clenched with determination. She would follow him. She would learn from him, and she would help in any way she could. She knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but with courage, hope, and unity, even the darkest path could be illuminated. As they prepared to leave, Lyra glanced at the human. He looked back at her, and in that silent exchange she understood something profound. Sometimes the smallest acts of bravery could spark the greatest revolutions. And with him leading the way, she felt that anything was possible. The small planet's forest was quiet in the early morning light, bathed in soft golden hues. The prisoners had slept fitfully, their dreams filled with both fear and hope. Lyra woke first, stretching her small arms, and immediately found the human sitting nearby, quietly preparing for the next phase of their journey. His calm presence was reassuring, and for the first time in days, Lyra felt safe. "Are we really going to make it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The human looked at her, eyes steady and kind. "We will," he said, "but we must be smart. The Dominion will not give up easily, and we have to be ready for anything." Lyra nodded, gripping her father's hand as they moved to follow him. She felt a mixture of fear and excitement, a strange energy coursing through her. Today, she realized, could change everything. The group moved carefully through the dense forest, keeping to shadows and avoiding any sign of patrols. The human led them with extraordinary precision, his knowledge of strategy and terrain unparalleled. Every turn was planned, every movement calculated to avoid detection. As they neared a cliff overlooking a valley, the human paused. "We have to cross this valley," he explained. "It's our only path to safety, but it is heavily monitored by Dominion scouts. We must be silent and precise." The prisoners exchanged worried glances. The valley stretched wide, and beyond it, They could see the glittering structures of a Dominion outpost, its lights scanning the terrain like watchful eyes. Fear prickled at Lyra's heart, but she refused to show it. She had learned courage from the human, and she intended to act bravely. "We'll go in small groups," the human instructed. "Follow me and do exactly as I say. No mistakes." Lyra's father tightened his grip on her hand. "Stay close," he whispered. Lyra nodded, taking a deep breath as she prepared to follow the human's lead. The first group moved silently, their footsteps barely making a sound on the rocky ground. The human led the way, guiding them through shadows and gaps in the patrol patterns. At one point, a scout stepped forward, its glowing eyes scanning the darkness. Lyra froze, heart hammering, but the human motioned with a calm hand. The scout's light passed over them without noticing, and they continued onward. Step by step, they crossed the valley, adrenaline pumping through their veins. The prisoners began to trust the human completely, following his instructions without question. Lyra's small body shook with fear, but she also felt a strange pride in her courage and in the man who led them. Halfway across, a sudden shout rang out. One of the prisoners had stumbled on a loose rock, alerting a nearby patrol. Red lights flashed and alarms echoed through the valley. The human reacted instantly. "Move. Now," he commanded. His voice carried authority, cutting through panic. He led the group with astonishing speed, weaving between patrols, jumping over gaps, and guiding everyone toward a hidden ravine. Lyra ran as fast as she could, her small legs trembling but her spirit strong. The Dominion soldiers fired energy beams, narrowly missing the group. Sparks flew and some of the trees around them caught fire, sending clouds of smoke into the sky. Lyra's eyes stung, but she refused to falter. The human glanced back briefly, giving her a small nod of reassurance, and she felt a surge of courage. Finally, they reached the safety of the ravine. The human quickly set up a small barrier, hiding the group from prying eyes. The prisoners collapsed, gasping for breath, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. Lyra sank to the ground, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were tears of relief. They had survived yet another test. The human knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said softly. "You are brave, Lyra. Never forget that." She looked up at him, her eyes wide. I want to be brave like you," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Bravery is not just about strength. It's about hope, courage, and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. You have all of that inside you." The group rested for a brief moment, but the human knew they could not linger. The Dominion would be searching relentlessly. He studied a map projected from a small device, calculating the safest route forward. "There is a settlement on the other side of the mountains," he explained. "It is neutral and we can find shelter there. But to get there we must move quickly and carefully. Are you ready?" The prisoners nodded, determination in their eyes. Lyra's father gave her a small squeeze. "We can do this," he said. Lyra nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility and hope pressing gently on her small shoulders. They moved through the rugged terrain, scaling cliffs and navigating narrow paths. The human guided them expertly, always aware of potential dangers. As night fell, they approached the settlement, a small village hidden in the mountains. Smoke rose from chimneys, and faint lights glimmered through the darkness. The settlement's inhabitants greeted them cautiously, but with relief. They were humans who had evaded the Dominion's grasp, survivors like the group Lyra traveled with. The human introduced them, explaining the escape and the danger that still loomed. The villagers nodded, offering food, water, and shelter. For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of safety. She looked around at the other prisoners, many of whom had grown close during the journey. Together, they shared stories of courage, fear, and hope. Lyra realized that even in the darkest moments, humans could survive, and even thrive when they worked together. That night, as the group settled in, the human gathered them around a small fire. "The Dominion will not give up," he said quietly. "But neither will we. We have survived impossible odds, and that is proof that we can fight back. Courage, hope, and unity, these are our greatest weapons." Lyra listened intently, her eyes shining with admiration. She understood now that bravery was not just about facing danger. It was about inspiring others, giving hope, and protecting those who needed it most. The following days were spent planning. The human taught the prisoners how to move stealthily, how to avoid detection, and how to defend themselves. Lyra practiced quietly, her small hands learning to handle simple tools and devices. Each lesson strengthened her confidence and her spirit. Then came the day when the Dominion found them. Patrols entered the mountains, searching for any sign of the escaped prisoners. The human quickly organized defenses, guiding the villagers and prisoners into hidden positions. Lyra's heart pounded, but she followed instructions perfectly, moving quietly and carefully just as she had been taught. The confrontation was tense. The Dominion soldiers advanced, confident in their power, but they underestimated the humans' determination. Using clever tactics, the human and the prisoners led the Dominion into traps, disabling patrols without direct confrontation. Every move was precise, every decision calculated. Lyra watched from a safe position as the human coordinated the defense. She realized that courage was contagious. The villagers and prisoners fought with bravery inspired by him. Even those who had been terrified now moved with confidence, knowing they had a leader who would guide them. In the midst of the chaos, the human confronted the Dominion commander who had orchestrated the executions. The commander was furious, but the human remained calm, standing tall despite the odds. "You cannot control us," he said firmly. "You may have power, but we have courage, hope, and unity, and those are stronger than fear." The commander's eyes glowed with rage, but the human did not flinch. His determination, his calm courage, and the unwavering support of those around him made the Dominion hesitate. For the first time, they realized that humans were not so easily broken. After a tense standoff, the Dominion forces retreated, unwilling to risk further losses. The humans had survived not through sheer strength, but through courage, cleverness, and unity. Lyra's heart swelled with pride and relief. That night, as the prisoners celebrated quietly, Lyra sat beside the human, her small hand resting in his. "We did it," she whispered. "Yes," he replied, a gentle smile on his face. "But this is only the beginning. There will be more challenges, but together we can face anything." Lyra looked around at the group, at the hope in their eyes, and she realized something profound. Courage was not just for the strong or the grown-ups. It was for anyone willing to stand, to act, and to protect others. And in that moment, she felt herself growing braver than she had ever imagined. The human turned to her and whispered, "Remember, Lyra, even the smallest act of bravery can change the world." "Never forget that." She nodded, feeling a warmth in her heart. She understood now that hope and courage were more powerful than fear, and that even in the darkest times, humans could rise to meet any challenge. The stars shone brightly above the mountains, a symbol of hope for the humans who had survived against all odds. And as Lyra looked up, she knew that their journey had only just begun. But with courage, unity, and the guidance of the human, they could face anything the universe put in their path. For the first time, the little girl felt truly free and truly brave.